Hello, my name's Kev. Welcome to KG Graves, the one-on-one series. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content like this. A big thank you to all of you who are already subscribed. This is number 49, Florence Nightingale at St Margaret of Antioch churchyard in Eastwellow, Hampshire. Florence Nightingale was born on the 12th of May 1820 in Florence, Tuscany, Italy. She was an English social reformer, statistician and nurse, her name being taken from a place of birth. The family, originally from England, moved back in 1821, and Florence was brought up in the family homes in Embley, Hampshire and Lea Hurst, Derbyshire. Florence and her older sister, Parthenope, studied history, mathematics, Italian, classical literature and philosophy. She underwent the first of several experiences that she believed were calls from God in February 1837 while at Embley Park, prompting a strong desire to devote her life to the service of others. In her youth she was respectful of family's opposition to her working as a nurse, only announcing her decision to enter the field in 1844. Florence worked hard to educate herself in the art and science of nursing in the face of opposition from her family. Her most persistent suitor was the politician and poet Richard Monckton Milnes, but after a 9-year courtship she rejected him, convinced that marriage would interfere with her ability to follow her calling to nursing. In Rome in 1847 she met Sidney Herbert, a politician who had been Secretary at War who at the time was on his honeymoon. He and Florence became lifelong close friends. Herbert would be Secretary of War again during the Crimean War, when he and his wife would be instrumental in facilitating Florence's nursing work in Crimea. She continued her travels as far as Greece and Egypt. While in Athens, she rescued a juvenile little owl from a group of children who were tormenting it, and she named the owl Athena. She often carried the owl in her pocket until the pet died soon before she left for Crimea. At Thebes, she wrote of being called to God, while a week later near Cairo, she wrote in her diary, "God called me in the morning and asked me would I do good for him alone without reputation." Later in 1850, she visited the Lutheran religious community at Kaiserswerth am Rhein in Germany, working for the sick and the deprived. She regarded the experience as a turning point in her life. She also received 4 months of medical training at the institute, which formed the basis for her later career. On the 22nd of August 1853, Florence took the post of superintendent at the Institute for the Care of Sick Gentlewomen in Upper Harley Street, London, a position she held until October 1854. Her father had given her an annual income of £500, which allowed her to live comfortably and pursue her career. Florence's most famous contribution came during the Crimean War, which became her central focus when reports got back to Britain about the horrific conditions for the wounded at the military hospital on the Asiatic side of the Bosporus opposite Constantinople at Scutari, now Istanbul. Britain and France entered the war against Russia on the side of the Ottoman Empire. On the 21st of October 1854, she and the staff of 38 women volunteer nurses were sent to the Ottoman Empire. The volunteer nurses worked about 295 nautical miles away from the main British camp across the Black Sea at Balaclava in the Crimea. She arrived at Selimi Barracks in Scutari early in November 1854. Her team found that poor care for wounded soldiers was being delivered by overworked medical staff. Medicines were in short supply, hygiene was being neglected, and mass infections were common, many of them fatal. After Florence sent a plea to the Times newspaper for a government solution to the poor conditions, the British government commissioned Isambard Kingdom Brunel to design a prefabricated hospital that could be built in England and shipped to the Dardanelles. The result was Renkioi Hospital, a civilian facility under the management of Edmund Alexander Parkes. Stephen Paget, in the Dictionary of National Biography, stated that Florence reduced the death rate from 42% to 2%, either by making improvements in hygiene herself or by calling for the Sanitary Commission. During her first winter at Scutari, 4,077 soldiers died there. 10 times more soldiers died from illnesses such as typhus, typhoid, cholera, and dysentery than from the battle wounds. With overcrowding, defective sewers and lack of ventilation, the Sanitary Commission had to be sent out by the British government to Scutari in March 1855, almost 6 months after Florence had arrived. The Commission flushed out the sewers and improved ventilation. Death rates were sharply reduced, but Florence never claimed credit for this. In May 1855, Florence herself became critically ill, and head nurse Eliza Roberts nursed her until she recovered. Florence had a frosty relationship with her fellow nurse, Mary Seacole, who ran a hotel hospital for officers. She reportedly wrote, "I had the greatest difficulty in repelling Mrs. Seacole's advances and in preventing association between her and my nurses, as well as to the men and officers who she would get drunk." She also told French chef Alexis Soyer, "You must know that Miss Nightingale is very fond of me." The arrival of 2 waves of Irish nuns, the Sisters of Mercy, to assist with nursing duties at Scutari, met with different responses from Florence. Mary Clare Moore headed the first wave and placed herself and her sisters under the authority of Florence. The 2 were to remain friends for the rest of their lives. The second wave, headed by Mary Frances Bridgman, met with a cooler reception as Bridgman refused to give up her authority over her sisters to Florence, while at the same time not trusting her. During the Crimean War, she gained the nickname the Lady of the Lamp, from a phrase in a report in the Times. The phrase was further popularised by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's 1857 poem Santa Filomena. In the Crimea, on the 29th of November 1855, the Nightingale Fund was established for the training of nurses. Florence had £45,000 at her disposal from the Nightingale Fund to set up the first nursing school, the Nightingale Training School at St Thomas's Hospital, on the 9th of July 1860. The first trained Nightingale nurses began work on the 16th of May 1865 at the Liverpool Workhouse Infirmary. Now called the Florence Nightingale Faculty of Nursing and Midwifery, the school is part of King's College London. She wrote a book called Notes on Nursing in 1859. The book served as the cornerstone of the curriculum at the Nightingale and other nursing schools. Florence advocated autonomous nursing leadership and that her new style of matrons had full control and discipline over their nursing staff. The infamous Guy's Hospital dispute in 1879 to 1880 between matron Margaret Burt and hospital medical staff highlighted how doctors sometimes felt that their authority was being challenged by these new style Nightingale matrons. This was not an isolated episode, and other matrons experienced similar issues, such as Eva Lucas. In the 1870s, Florence mentored Linda Richards, America's first trained nurse, and enabled her to return to the United States with adequate training and knowledge to establish high-quality nursing schools. Richards went on to become a nursing pioneer in the US and Japan, as well as other nurses that Florence mentored. From 1857 onwards, she was intermittently bedridden and suffered from depression. A recent biography cites brucellosis and associated spondylitis as the cause. Despite her symptoms, she remained phenomenally productive. Florence's output slowed down considerably in her last decade. She wrote very little during that period due to blindness and declining mental abilities, though she still retained an interest in current affairs. Florence died peacefully in her sleep, in her room, on the 13th of August 1910, at the age of 90. A memorial monument to her was created in Carrara marble by Francis William Sargent in 1913 and placed in the cloister of the Basilica of Santa Croce in Florence, Italy. In 1912, the International Committee of the Red Cross instituted the Florence Nightingale Medal, which is awarded every 2 years to nurses or nursing aides for outstanding service. It is the highest international distinction a nurse can achieve. Since 1965, International Nurses' Day has been celebrated on her birthday, 12th of May, each year. The President of India honours nursing professionals with the National Florence Nightingale Award every year on International Nurses' Day. The award, established in 1973, is given in recognition of meritorious services of nursing professionals characterised by devotion, sincerity, dedication and compassion. The Nightingale Pledge is a modified version of the Hippocratic Oath, which nurses recite at the pinning ceremony at the end of training. Created in 1893 and named after Florence as the founder of modern nursing, the pledge is a statement of the ethics and principles of the nursing profession. Various hospitals across Europe are named after her. A statue of Florence by the 20th century war memorialist Arthur George Walker stands in Waterloo Place, Westminster, London, just off the Mall. There are 3 statues of her in Derby, one outside the Derbyshire Royal Infirmary, one in St Peter's Street and one above the Nightingale Macmillan Continually Care Unit opposite the Derbyshire Royal Infirmary. Various films and documentaries were made about Florence for TV, as well as her image appearing on the £10 banknote issued by the Bank of England from 1975 until 1994. The US Navy, the USS Florence Nightingale, an AP-70, was commissioned in 1942. In 1981, the asteroid 3122 Florence was named after her. A Dutch KLM McDonnell Douglas MD-11, registration PHKCD, was also named in her honour. It served the airline for 20 years from 1994 to 2014. She received many awards, including the jewel awarded to her from Queen Victoria for her services to the soldiers in the Crimean War. A blue plaque was installed where she lived in South Street, Mayfair, London. Let's see where her grave is located. So, there you have it. The grave of Florence Nightingale, social reformer, statistician and nurse. If you have enjoyed watching this video, then please like, subscribe and hit the bell for more content like this. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.